Hey guys, laptop world has seen some interesting upgrades in the recent years, and the new 2021 version of the Aftershocks Vapor Series laptop with a 17-inch screen is certainly one of them. This bad boy packs a 1440p 165Hz display with the latest RTX 30 series graphics card and an 8-core Intel CPU. That's a lot of specs in actually a really small body. Let's see if it's any good. And if you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing. Let's start from the outside and work inwards. Its top lid has a matte black magnesium alloy finish with a fairly discreet logo in the middle. As I mentioned earlier, this is a 17-inch unit, and I immediately noticed that it's actually pretty compact considering the size. It is just over 39 cm wide, 27 cm deep, while staying pretty thin at 2 cm. Despite weighing only 2.3 kilograms, it still has a proper graphics card and a chunky 91 watt-hour battery inside. More on that later on. In terms of I/O, on the right we have a microSD slot as well as two USB 3 Type A ports. These are running at 5 gigabit speed. On the left side there is another USB 3 Type A port, but this one is running at 10 gigabit speed. Just below there is an audio port. One thing that really caught me off guard was the lack of other ports, and then I had a look behind. Here we find one of those extending network ports, power in as well as GPU outputs, which include HDMI and USB Type-C. It makes sense to place these at the back as it has direct link to the built-in graphics card. I really like the screen hinge as it can be opened with one hand and actually feels pretty sturdy. I'm not sure what Aftershock did here, but the whole assembly is very rigid with the limited amount of flex on the screen and the chassis. Even if you type pretty violently, the screen does not go into a crazy wobble. Once you power up the device, you're greeted with a very bright RGB keyboard which features 4 separate zones. There are plenty of customization options within the control center software that comes with the laptop as well. It includes ability to control light bar below the trackpad, as well as more performance focused settings like battery mode, fan profiles, as well as adjustments to CPU and GPU power settings. Since it is a larger size laptop, I'm happy to see that it features a full-size keyboard with a numpad, which I personally really like. Interesting to note is the typeface of the keys. It's not your usual Helvetica or Arial. This seems to be more futuristic and certainly grabs your attention the first time you see it. They had to make some sacrifices though, mostly on the right side of the chassis, where they crammed a lot of keys together, so it may lead to some misclicks. But overall, I'm pretty happy that they did not make the enter key smaller or move the important keys around. While we're on the subject of keyboard, it feels and sounds pretty good, even though there's a bit of wobble in the keys. It's not caused me any typing issues, but I feel it's important to note. One other thing that stood out to me is touchpad. It has a nice and large glass surface and it tracks really well, but our pre-production unit has a pretty significant click. It is anywhere below halfway point, which is where you would press most of the time. I'll raise this with Aftershock team and they reassured me that this is not present on the production unit. It has downward firing speakers on each side and they are, well, they're speakers. Nothing here to blow you away. They will do as speakers for on-the-go meeting or even if you're cooking in the kitchen and you need to watch a recipe video. But to be honest, you may be better off using headphones in all other situations. One other great quality improvement over last gen is webcam placement. They've said goodbye to the nose cam and in this generation it is positioned at the top just like it should be. It's not the best quality, but will certainly do for on-the-go meetings. It's also paired with a Windows Hello, which makes unlocking the device as simple as just opening the lid. Nice. This Vapor 17X features a large and sharp Quad HD display. I'm so happy that the laptops have finally included an upgrade from 1080p without forcing us to go 4K. At this size, 1440p is perfect. You get nice resolution without destroying your graphics card and battery life with it. Due to the matte finish, you'll have good viewing angles even with the light source shining right at it. This leads us rather well to what's under the hood. Let's start with the CPU. This laptop comes with a 10th gen Intel i7 8-core 16-thread mobile chip with a max turbo frequency of 5 GHz. Aftershock also has the latest AMD based unit. Let us know if you'd like us to review that too. RAM wise, we have 16 GB, but you can go up to 32 GB using 2 sticks. Similar stories for the storage. There are 2 M.2 slots. Our particular unit is equipped with a single 1TB Samsung drive, but you can choose your own configuration based on your requirements and budget. As far as connectivity goes, there is the aforementioned network port, which runs at 2.5 gigabit speed, and we have Wi-Fi 6, so you're certainly up to date here. And last but not least is the graphics card. You have a choice between two latest mobile chips from NVIDIA RTX lineup, 3060 and 3070. This particular unit is using RTX 3070, and between the 1440p display and high refresh rate, I would really recommend upgrading, as you'll need all the power you can get. Let me show you why as we jump into benchmarks. We're starting with a nice and easy game, CSGO. Most mid-range PCs can now run this game at around 200 FPS at 1080p, and this laptop can do the same. In fact, it's even keeping up at 1440p with 187 average FPS and keeping up reasonable 1 percentile performance, placing it squarely in the league of good enough for high refresh rate esports gaming. The story starts to change when we look at the more graphic-intensive games like Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Horizon Zero Dawn, and Total War 3 Kingdoms. Here we see that performance drops considerably, but is still playable at 1080p on all of the games, including Quake 2 with RTX enabled. When we bump up the resolution to 1440p, this laptop gets crushed in Total War 3 Kingdoms and Quake 2 RTX. Nevertheless, still pretty good. For productivity benchmarks, we first have Cinebench R20, and here Vapor 17X was able to get 484 points in a single core and 3,297 points in a multi-core score. While it is 20 to 30% slower than the latest gen desktop CPUs, it is only a third of a TDP. If we compare it to the Gigabyte Aorus 15G laptop, which is using a similar chip, then we immediately see that there's plenty of horsepower under the hood. Next, we ran PCMark benchmark, which covers a whole range of workloads. We then compared it to the desktop build that we did last year, as well as Aorus 15G, and the results are rather interesting. While reviewing Aorus laptop, we determined that it was a good laptop, but is lacking in the graphical performance. The Vapor 17 on the other hand comes with the latest NVIDIA RTX 3070 mobile chip, and certainly closes the gap. I would even go as far as to say you could replace most desktop PCs for many casual gamers with the ability to take it on the go to do work no matter where you are. This brings us well to the battery life. It is a 17-inch 1440p laptop after all. For this test, we set the power plan to balanced, turned off keyboard backlight, and set the monitor brightness to 50% with Wi-Fi on. Benchmark was done using PCMark Modern Office Test, and it lasted 6 hours and 47 minutes. It's not quite a full day battery, but it's pretty close. Kudos for that. And finally, one of the more tests that is relevant to the overall performance is thermals and acoustics. For this test, we ran Heaven Benchmark and 1440p to push it as hard as possible, and found something somewhat expected. During this test, we got 143 average FPS and 77 FPS on 1 percentiles. With this in mind, GPUs hovering around 80 degrees and CPUs bouncing between 80 and 90 degrees. The funny thing here is the CPU is not really doing much, as we are very much GPU bottleneck. You can see it clearly on the frequencies. Here CPU is running only at about 10% of its maximum speed. Same is visible on the power consumption graph. Ultimately, in gaming you need fast GPU, especially when you're bumping up the resolution. Since max temperature is high, you would expect it to be pretty quiet. But you're in for a surprise unless you've had a gaming laptop before. This thing needs to cool pretty hefty hardware while remaining small, so of course there are sacrifices. While running Heaven Benchmark at around 30 centimeters away, it measured 52.5 decibel. It is not deafening, but you will likely need to put some headphones on or turn up the game sound. With all of this said, there are a few things Aftershock could improve on in the future. First would be inclusion of touchscreen. While it is something that is normally underutilized, I personally do miss it. The second thing would be a better speaker setup. As it stands right now, the speakers are a bit of an afterthought. With these improvements, I believe it would certainly be a good full desktop replacement for professionals or even students with a larger budget. To close this off, I feel this is a pretty good performance machine with some rough edges. To the right person, this is going to be a perfect purchase which should last for quite a while. With its slim design, good balance between thermals and performance, this laptop is certainly worth the attention. I hope you found this useful. Don't forget to smash that thumbs up and subscribe for more. We'll see you guys in the next one.